right. How's it going, everyone? Another week of new topics. We'll wait a little bit let some more people jump in before we get started on the topic. But Jonathan, how was your week of sourcing? Did
Yeah,
you spend what you hope to spend? Did you make use of any President's Day sales that were happening earlier in the week?
yeah. Honestly, like I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I've never had ginormous success with the holiday stuff. I think part of it is mentally, I know, and we've talked about this, but um, if everyone has access to the same discount and it's not something that's advantageous, I don't know that it puts you in a better position. I will say when that happens, like the replens that are good replens, meaning like they're good listings, if it's an opportunity to buy it lower. So like I've yet to have a holiday where it's just absolute crushing. Um, but just nice and consistent. What about you?
Yeah, I didn't spend a ton of money, like how specifically, like website sale, holiday, President's Day sale only. But I mean, it was a normal week for me. Wasn't any. I didn't spend a ton more than I normally would.
I would say something that's a little atypical for me is that there's a product that I sell as a large pack, and I've been getting it from Target, and they bumped the price substantially. So not something that's part of my typical arsenal, but I'm buying from Amazon for an Amazon to Amazon flip. So that's something relatively new. I'm testing the waters on. And also for the
Nice.
first time, I'm like I'm a price tanker. It's funny though. It kind of makes sense. Like I had what I thought to be a great product, very unknown. It was on a site, heavily discounted, and sure enough, like I was the only seller for months, selling it for like over $100. Everyone jumps on, but I'm sitting on like 100 units. And so now, and there's probably 15 sellers, I've dropped the price to like $40 because even at that number, I'll break even. And my thought is,
Sheesh.
if anybody wants to stay in the game, I can outlast on my quantity. So let me drive the price down, velocity up. Everybody will sell out, in my opinion, because by the way, it's like gone from the site. And then
Yep.
eventually I'll be able to make profit again on the remaining ones. So like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's also a good lesson. Like you never really know the reason. Everyone just assumes price takers are idiots. You don't really know the whole picture sometimes. Sometimes they are just idiots. And I'm not saying I'm not one, but like in this instance, it kind of makes
No,
it's
that's kind of
strategic.
like that's like a crazy tactic, to be honest. I mean, you think about like you have enough units where you can outlast the people who bought 10 or
Right.
15, they sell out, and then eventually, you just kind of slowly raise your price because everyone's
Right.
has to match your low price, and then maybe you sell, like you said, 20 out of the 100 units at break even, but the rest of the 30 left that you had, you're making 5, 10, $15
Yep.
profit because there's only 3 sellers on the listing now instead.
Exactly. And also, if I didn't lower the price and it stayed relatively high, the velocity wouldn't be there. I'd be sitting on these for months. So it's like it is a high demand item, but when you're the only seller versus 15 sellers and you're
Oh,
happy for one a day, so
yeah. All right. Well, 4 minutes in, let's jump into the topic today or this week.
yeah.
So you want to introduce, I guess,
Yeah.
what we are planning on talking about today?
Yeah, I think something that's always valuable and to recircle is knowing what I know now, what would I do differently? And I know we've talked a little bit ahead of this preparing, but I just think that there's a lot of there's a lot of things that are crystal clear to us at this stage of the game that there's no way you would have known this when you started. So for anybody earlier on, even if you're not day one, I think there can be a lot of value, and I think we should also maybe share some of the things we got right as well. It's not just like, oh, I did this wrong. I'm sure we did some things right, as well.
Yep. Yep. That's a great idea. Yeah. If you guys have questions or as we're, walking through things that we wish we did differently and you want to, respond to that or add comments, definitely drop them in the comment section and we will we'll go back and forth between responses and comments. But Philly asks, how long did it take you guys to get to the flow of things? Meaning, how long did it take for you to gain momentum with your business, capital, knowledge-wise, et cetera?
So for me, gosh, I mean, first off, for me, I started with just retail arbitrage. So, I think it took a couple months to really be like, oh, wow, this works, right? Cash flow, figuring that out took forever, honestly, especially when I jumped into online arbitrage. Consistently finding good products, like consistently, like waking up knowing that today I will be able to spend whatever I need to spend, probably not till the last year. Like I always got it done, but it always felt like I was pushing a boulder uphill to make it happen. And now it's much more easeful, and still learning all the time. Like I feel like I'm almost 4 years in, and like I sit here today just now being like, I've got a really good grasp on things, but I also learn things every single day.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It took me quite a while actually to start gaining momentum. I mean, I was like scaling. I did the same thing. I started with retail arbitrage, so it took me a bit. Like I definitely like plateaued at a certain point where I'm not finding as much. I'm going to the stores 2-3 days a week, just not as much new stuff on discount or whatever. So when I jumped to online arbitrage, gained a little bit of momentum, but it still took me a long time. And I wasn't really one to like seek out information of problems that I was having. I just solved them on my own, which is, it's fine doing it that way. I definitely learned a lot doing that, but I could have cut a bunch of corners and sped up the learning curve if I had, watched more content or reached out to more, people in this, other Amazon sellers in the space, and could have, maybe sped things up a little bit. Yeah, capital, that's always a battle. I think at least for the first how many years you do it, and once you finally are on a consistent pace, like I think we are, it definitely gets easier. But yeah, capital is always a fight, especially when you're scaling.
Yeah, and not just capital, but also like understanding the speed at which you get your money back. It takes a long time to understand good buys and bad buys. I guess the biggest thing I would say is this: just stay consistent with it, and it'll definitely pay off. But like, don't be discouraged if it doesn't all click right away. And also, I'll say this any chance I get. This is why I'm such a huge advocate for like keeping your day job if you have it, because you can kind of scratch the surface while having an income, make your mistakes, learn, and you can certainly do this on nights and weekends and free time and stuff. So, because there is absolutely a learning curve, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It takes a long time.
Yep. And Reggie, we'll get to the repricing and stuff. I think it's part of something. We're going to talk about software and stuff, so we'll get to that question. But otherwise, Jonathan, you want to jump into kind of the first? I guess what's maybe the biggest thing that you wish you would have done differently, or wish you had more knowledge about when you were learning it? Because I mean, there's a lot of little things, but what's maybe the biggest thing to start?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind when we decided on the topic, pretty much hands down, and I've thought about it. It's tracking products from day one. And what I mean by that, I don't mean anything super elaborate, right? But something, let me kind of fill you in on my current state and where I'm at. Essentially all products are cyclical. Cyclical meaning they have good times, bad times, okay times, great times, right? Supply and demand, just the charts, And so if you come across something that's sourcing, maybe it's high demand, it's a good mover, but there's just not enough profit, save it in a Google Sheet. Product description, ASIN, the site, right? Maybe make a note about it. Anything that you buy, same thing. Bought it here, maybe a note about it. And this takes you a second, right? Things that don't have enough profit, things you've bought, things that are out of stock. When you start doing this for years upon years, my whole thing is this: basically, at any given time, let's say 10% of the products that have ever been in your catalog at any given time will be at a great or good enough time to make sense. So the bigger catalog that you have, it's just a numbers game. But also things that you don't know what to do from day one, but now that I know what to do, it could have been very advantageous. So like there's something called Keep a Product Viewer. you can literally upload your ASINs and you can filter it by what has increased in the buy box, by in the last 90 days, right? And things like that. So even if you don't know exactly how you're going to use that information later on, take it from me or anyone else that's gone through it, that there will be a point in time you're going to kick yourself and say, dang, I wish I had when you're sourcing and you come across a product that's not quite there, but close, or it was good enough, or, you bought it and it fell off. You've done 90% of the work. So store it and revisit it down the line, and you'll be very glad you did. Because even if it's only once or twice a year, you may have the opportunity to buy it. It'll pay off because, again, you've done 90% of the work.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that's. I mean, if I had to, pick something that I think would have propelled me a little bit faster, that's definitely like one of the biggest things. And I mean, my journey, just walking through my journey, right? I would buy a product, whether it sold well or it tanked, right? I bought 5 of them. Let's say it was retail arbitrage, right? I bought whatever's on the shelf. Maybe there's 5 of them. The product tanked, and I just forgot about it forever. Like I'm like, this product's bad forever. But like you said, the products are cyclical. So sometimes I would just stumble upon that same lead without even realizing it. 4 months later on a 4th of July sale, right? And you're just like, oh man, I sold this in the past, but it sucked. But I think it helps to really like look at the day once you understand how cyclical the product is. How are you finding this product, or how profitable are you compared to how profitable you were the first time? You got an idea of, if you are priced competitively, how quickly did you sell it the first time around? Because that will help you on basically how many you should be buying again. And then, like understanding how, I guess, like what's the chart telling you? Because you've seen it before. Just because it tanked last time doesn't mean it's going to tank again. You just want to, use the sales history that you have. Because for me, it was like I'd buy something and I would never. I think that's one of my topics was like replenishables. I really didn't replenish products or even consider a second purchase, even if it sold amazing. I bought 15 units and I sold them all at the exact price or even higher price than I planned to. I'm like, awesome. And then I'd look for new products. Wouldn't even revisit the product, even if it's still on sale. I didn't start replenishing. I think I like made my first replenishable purchase over a year in to the business. So it's like, just understanding the products that you've already sold, right? That data is better than most Keepa data. I mean, the Keepa data is helpful in combined with like your sales history, but you selling the product, how quickly it sells, when it checked in, what price did it have, right? Did you have to lower your price? Did you have to, reprice? Was there a lot of competition? Like all that information is going to really help you learn, what products are good, what products are bad, what charts are good, what charts to maybe avoid, what charts you can go a little bit deeper on, right? What charts are maybe worth a test buy first. It's going to just happen over time. You're going to just learn more about the charts and stuff like that. But, if you are like storing your products and even the ones that, weren't a good buy at the beginning, doesn't mean they're always a bad buy. Everything, can be profitable depending on what sales running or where you're finding the products. So yeah, I think that's super important for beginners and even intermediate sellers, right? You've been selling for a year, but you haven't really replenished, you're like, how do I replenish these products? Well, understand what price you got in the first time around, and then, pay attention to sites that sell that product. And then when you notice sales happening, check those products that you've already sold. Start with those, right? That's kind of what I do now is if I see a site is running a sale, I mean, I'm most of the time looking at my current products that I've either sold recently or sold farther along in the past. And checking, like, can I buy this now? Because I know it sold for me in the past, right? I have seller board that told me I sold 10 units in a week and a half, and I made a 45% ROI when I bought it at this price. Can I get it at this price again? Am I getting it cheaper yet? So yeah, a lot goes into it, but it's going to be your best friend when you can really learn how to track your products and understand the sales cycle of them.
Yeah, it's kind of like blind faith because, again, you don't fully understand what we're saying if you if you haven't lived it long enough yet. But like even to this day, seriously, I track things that I come across that are out of stock, that don't have enough profit, things that I buy naturally because you need to also know what's coming to your place. And by the way, yo, I'm sorry, I'm laughing at this.
I know what I was saying.
Hey, I don't know if this is just like being just completely like new to it or whatever, but like I don't think anybody would willingly give out their storefront. No, don't get me wrong. If my storefront were to get out, the list of products, like you still have to have the skill set to find them at the right price, know when to buy them and stuff. I wouldn't be like shaking in my boots. Okay. But like, all right. Well, listen. I don't
Yeah,
know.
who knows? Never know. You never know.
Yeah. So yeah. All
For
right.
anybody
Well,
else listening,
we can move on from that then.
storefront is not something you want to give out. Everybody will find your leads, but again, yeah, you got to know, you still got to find them profitable. So
Yeah. But
anyway, well, we can go some questions here. I guess Stephanie asked, do you use a software to organize the products or just a Google sheet? For me, I have Sellerboard, which it's great for replens. It's cheap. It's like $20 a month, right? And it basically will tell you, it's kind of like Inventory Lab. But it's just like a very user-friendly dashboard. So you can, check your sales. It tells you every item that's sold each day. You can filter by different time frames. And then you can also filter by like what ASINs are selling. So it'll tell you, these, you sold $1,000 worth of inventory today. 6 of them were this item, 3 of them were this item, 3 of them this item. It tells you the ROI and it breaks down all the fees involved. And if you got returns, it'll add that into the ROI. So it's good to see like, oh, I sold 10 pairs of shoes. 1 of them was returned. My ROI before the return was 50% ROI. And after the return, it was down to 28%. So it's like, if this trend continues, right, if I sell 10 and get 1 return, I'm only going to make 28% when I thought I was making 50. So it's just like, it's helping you understand. So,
hey, I'm right here.
Webcam's going berserk right now. But yeah, so otherwise, I mean, if you just have a really good handle on your Google Sheets too, I think that's another simple. I mean, it's a very simple way to manage. I have a bunch of different Google Sheets that I use to organize certain leads, right? Like if I have out of stock leads or leads that I know are normally out of stock because they're either fast sellers and people are buying them, then you can have a specific sheet for that. I have another sheet for just random leads that I find. I have another sheet for ones that I require a discount just to be just to be super profitable. And then I obviously write details at how profitable or what discounts are needed, what percentage discounts. So, John, anything else to add to that?
I just use a Google sheet. I basically have one sheet for all of this stuff and just different tabs. So, things that I've bought maybe that I send to myself, because I'll have a different Google sheet for like Prep Center. So stuff I send to myself, I use my mom as a prep center. So things I send to her, I'll have a not enough profit. I'll have an out of stock. And I think I have some storefronts that I've come across actually that I don't really do a whole lot of that, but like there are some that you just see time and time again on repeat for good products. And you're like, oh, this person probably knows what they're doing. If I'm ever in a rut, can't hurt to just have a handful of those too. So that's kind of everything that I'm storing. And I'm really about like, make it as simple as possible. Don't overcomplicate it if you don't have to. I've heard really good things about Sellerboard, but like from an essential standpoint, a Google Sheet is more than what you need,
Yep, exactly. I mean, Sellerboard is nice they do have features, and it's a little bit tricky to learn, but the features of Sellerboard, they do have like replenishable. So it will take your estimated sales per day or sales per month, and it based on your sales history, right? Not based on anything else but sales history. And then it will tell you how many you should replenish estimated based on your, how many you sold, when you should be replenishing based on, lead. You can add your own lead times in there. If you're shipping it to a prep center, right? How long do they take to prep the product, and how long does it take with FC transfer? You can add all those time frames in. So it'll tell you, right? You sold all 15 of your units, you should buy 30 more, and you should have done that 2 weeks ago. So So that part's nice. I mean, I don't use it often because it's just a lot to look at. Like there's just sometimes an information overload with Seller Board and inventory. I do. So just to answer your question, Stephanie, I also have Inventory Lab, but I don't really look at the metrics more than I do just like the profit and loss and overall. I'm not looking at specific ASINs more on Inventory Lab. I'll do that on Seller Board just because the dashboard's really easy. But yeah, and one more thing I was going to add, that's not super important, but I think if you have like a replenishable spreadsheet, it's going to get messy quick because certain items can be replenishable at certain times of the year or certain sales cycles, and it may not be replenishable for another 8 months. So you're going to add products to the sheet that just aren't replenished. Any product in your inventory could be replenishable if the right sale comes around, if the right chart, if the chart looks right. So it's kind of, to me, it's just kind of a waste of a tracking. It's just more data to track that's not any extra helpful. I don't know if you have any like opposition to that, but I feel like if you have your specific spreadsheets that are specifically for when you're purchasing certain products, just a standard replenishable sheet, like I could replenish literally all my products depending on what sale is happening, right? But like 90% of them aren't replenishable most of the time. It's just, I don't know if I explained that super well, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have major pushback. I guess to me, there's just no real downside. It's not like taking up a whole lot of mental space to throw an extra couple ASINs a day or whatever. Something I did forget, though, I will mention, and this is like a real life example. So, and a little tip for you guys, but like Walgreens, very frequently will have buy one, get one 50% off, which you can stack with like a 20% off coupon. Buy one, get one free, stack with a 20% coupon. And when they do that, so like if, what I like to do is have a separate tab just for my Walgreens purchases, for instance, because I know when that sale's going on, or if sites like that and they're frequent, right? It's like, okay, here's my list of 20 things I've bought. I'm not saying they're all going to hit right now, but I know at some point in time I've bought these from them. And I don't have to, figure out, oh, do I sell on the 2-pack or the 4-pack or whatever? It's like, it's all there, right? So I think that's another good tab to have. But when you find sites that have ongoing sales or repetitive sales frequently, and you found some form of success with them, keep tabs of that too. You basically already have an ongoing shopping list.
Yep. And there's not a ton of sites out there that will stack discounts. And so if you're listening, Walgreens is definitely a good one. There's a couple others, but yeah. I'm sure you guys can figure that out when you are sourcing. But yeah, to have something specific, if you have certain leads for that website, it's almost a no-brainer. It's just going to increase your efficiency when they are running sales, and you'll be able to spend a lot easier than manually searching or trying to remember which leads you should be looking at. It's just a smarter way to do it.
Yep.
All right. I guess we could let's go to maybe some of the other things that we wish we would have done different. We can come back to the chat in a little bit.
Yeah, let me just look at my notes and see which one I'm going to pull up next here. So, okay, I think this is something that I could see different sides to this for different situations, but let me preface this by saying what I know now is that I think there's essentially two ways to cash flow, right? So like count on money to come to you when it's all said and done. It's either to pull out money from day one or a certain percentage, right, from day one for each disbursement, or you grow, take out what you need to, and then eventually you're going to kind of plateau on your spending, and then you're going to, hit a consistency, right? So I say all that to say, I think myself, and I think for a lot of people, they would benefit from paying themselves a set percentage or amount from day one. And a couple of reasons for that. For one, I think it could be very deflating if you're putting so much time, money, effort, energy into something and not seeing any like financial reward from it. And I've heard this concept before. So that's one side of it. Another is that I kind of think that if you're not paying yourself and you just have it all, I think there's like this badge of honor, like I'm just reinvesting everything. But what I've come to realize I think it makes you a little sloppier because you have more like leeway and more money to play with. But if you pay yourself first, say, and I'm not talking a lot early on, especially, but 20% of your disbursement, right? Every single month from day one. And if it means you grow a little bit slower, it kind of forces your hand to maybe become a little more selective, a better sourcer. This is a big patience game, but you can also snowball it pretty quickly. I would rather should have paid myself from day one and had to be a little more selective on my purchases. And I think a lot of people get discouraged and they don't understand when cash flow is going to happen or figure it out. And I think that's a great mental and tactical approach, knowing what I know now, because I promise you, this doesn't get talked about nearly enough. I think like a lot of people I don't think are making money or don't even know they're not making money. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to like be negative or throw shade. Amazon's a low barrier entry game. And I think the consistency rate is probably not that high. So like, I think that's a great way to set yourself up for success. Just going back to what we preached last week, slow, steady wins the race. And I think there's something to be said about that, the paying yourself.
Yep. And I'll add to that, not quite the paying yourself side, because I think you did a good job talking about that, but also tracking your spend, I think is pretty important. And it kind of goes with paying yourself, because you need to understand how much are you spending on inventory each month. And then, out of your payouts, right, you should be paying what you spend down, right? Especially if it's on a credit card, pay that down. And then whatever's left over, right, is used towards software, is used towards paying yourself, is used towards whatever else, what other expenses in the business. So for me, tracking the inventory was something that I just wasn't good at, and I didn't do, and more tracking the spend, right? You can be tracking your product. We talked about tracking your products, right? And understanding like sales cycles and stuff, but I'm talking more about like actual financials. Track your spend on inventory. How much are you spending each week, right? And if you are you're not growing as fast as you thought you would, and you're like, oh, I'm stuck at 10K a month, or I'm stuck at 5K a month, there's a pretty high chance that you're not spending enough on inventory. I mean, that's the way to grow this business. Is the more inventory you have available to sell, the more opportunity you have to sell, the more you will sell. So I think for me, it was like I would spend, I'd find a sale, right? And before I was tracking whatever, a couple of years ago, I'd find a sale, I'd buy a bunch of it, and then I wouldn't find anything for a week. And your sales would be really high once all that stuff checks in, but then the week after, your sales are low because all of that's, you didn't spend for a week later. So I think just understanding the numbers is good, because you can right, there's a lot of, you track your inventory. You understand, okay, when I spent 5,000 this month, it generated 10,000 in sales. Okay, if I want to double, right, I need to double my sales based on my spend to revenue ratio. Basically, you can just, in theory, double your spend to be able to double your revenue. So, I mean, it's not quite black and white like that, but just getting the understanding of, okay, how much am I actually spending per week? How can I improve that number? And then that should equate to more sales if you're sticking to your criteria, right? If you're sitting at a minimum 30-40% ROI, and you're increasing your spend, I mean, that's just going to automatically equal more sales. So tracking that, those numbers are going to be helpful. And it's also going to help you understand, how much you can pay yourself, because you should understand how much profit you're making off of the inventory you're spending. And then based on whatever's left over, right, you can pay yourself with that.
Yeah. And actually, just to touch upon that and back to what I was saying, if you're not tracking your numbers, first off, if any business, you need to know your numbers, right? You can't manage what doesn't get measured. And I know it takes some time to build some like data, like a couple months worth of stuff, but like, just for instance, right? Let's say you're spending, you're not paying attention. You don't have a firm budget, as in like, let's just say it's not going to break your bank if you spend 10 grand or 5 grand, right? But let's say you're spending 5 grand one month, and on that you're making 2 grand profit, but the next month you unknowingly spend 12 grand, right? Well, that's great, but now you've spent more than too quickly, basically, is what I'm getting at. And it's like, you just need to know your numbers. I mean, like he was saying, you need, but tracking the spending is really good. And it's a great way. Everything kind of just falls into place. If you keep your ROI and your parameters, and assuming you're buying the same quality of products, then it just becomes a numbers game. You spend more, you make more. And you kind of also can anticipate how much you're going to do in sales, what your cash flow is going to be, et cetera. But and that also, it start with baby steps early on when you can.
Yep. And just going the opposite way on that to kind of wrap up the conversation on this. If you are trying to scale, spending more money just to spend it because you think that's going to equate to more revenue, it might equate to more revenue, not going to always generate more profits. So
yeah,
definitely the biggest focus, especially early on, should be on quality products, right? Making sure that you're not buying a bunch of products that tank, or Nike's running a sale. Okay, I can spend easily $3,000 today because they're running a 25% off sale. Well, hundreds of other sellers also have access to that sale, and a lot of them are buying. So you will, if you think you're making 40% ROI, by the time it actually sells, just understand you might be making 20%, which goes back to having some sort of way to track your profit and ROI, whether that's Inventory Lab, Seller Board, again, is good for tracking how much you're actually making after returns, after, whatever you're actually selling it for. So, I think we've exhausted this topic, but definitely tracking is very, very important in all aspects.
Yeah. No,
let's go to some comments quick, just because we've got a couple of them. So Stephanie asks, are we allowed to reuse Amazon boxes for FBA shipments? Definitely. Use any box you have. Could be Home Depot boxes, could be U-Haul, could be boxes that you receive Nike product into your house. Any box you have, Amazon doesn't care. As long as you have the right shipping labels and stuff, that's all they care about.
Yeah. And just to clarify on that, that's also assuming you do mean FBA. FBM, yeah. I mean, if assuming it's correct, FBA, anything. Yeah. FBM's a little bit more, you want to use unmarked boxes.
Or plain. Yeah. Definitely don't ship those. If you are doing FBM, don't use the blue painted Walmart boxes. Amazon doesn't like that too much.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Besmer says, what other tools are you actually using? I think we'll get into the tools that we wish we had, softwares that are kind of essential, some that aren't as essential. Does Nike allow shipments to prep centers? Yep, they allow you to ship anywhere. Doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential. Do you guys use CVS too, or only Walgreens? Me personally, I'll buy anywhere that's profitable. CVS, I think, has canceled orders for me in the past, but I've also placed plenty of orders. So just got to find what works for you. And if you're finding products on CVS, then go ahead.
I'm going to have to try it again, but I've been unsuccessful with CVS often, to the point that I just stopped altogether, but it's been a long time. But until that day comes,
order cancels, you're saying?
Yeah.
I think they, at least recently, I guess I haven't placed an order there in a while, but I used to be able to place larger orders. I think if you try to replace anything over a couple of units, it flags the system and cancels. So even though they say you can max, like you can do the drop down and it lets you choose up to like 15 units or something, I think that flags their system. And sometimes I think you can get away with like picking, if the store has enough to pick up, you can maybe get away with it. I've heard people, but Walgreens is solid. I mean, I think Walgreens is definitely
but go for CVS until you're blocked. You might as well,
Yeah. If you're getting orders through, shoot, a lot of people probably aren't like us. So take advantage of maybe the less sellers. So Jonathan, are you using profit first method? Good question.
Not by no means. And I'm still not, I like some of the concepts of it. And for those people, I could see where it works, but it's more of the biggest part I'm pulling from that, which I was speaking to, is just making sure you're paying yourself, rather than pay the bills by inventory. Oh, if there's anything left, like if you have intentionality with paying yourself a reasonable amount, I just think that you figure it out with the rest. I'm sure there's a law or a rule that's actually called, but yeah, so it's, I didn't necessarily get it from that, but same thing. One of the things that they apply.
It's definitely a good method. I mean, I've read the book and stuff and looked into trying to use it. It is hard to track with such a like a cash based or I guess a spend based business where you're buying
Yeah.
inventory and it's different every month. If you had a bunch of fixed costs, which we have softwares and stuff, but we don't have a ton of fixed costs in this business. It's more, variable costs that are changing based on the sales, based on the time of year, right? December, obviously, it's way more so the way the profit first works is it's like pay yourself and then but again it's
Bank accounts. Yeah.
it's just it's a little bit trickier with
Yeah.
the business we're in where your spending changes every month. So
Yeah.
all the CVS stores here have closed.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, hey, Walgreens
Yeah.
all the way. I mean, there's other pharmacies too that that'll work. Or and in store, I don't know. Do in store pharmacies, does Walgreens in store have good deals compared to online, or are they the same?
I don't know. I think you always get a better deal online, but like if you do, like you said, you buy online, then you pick it up, kind of like a hybrid version. I've done that, and I've found success. Not necessarily Walgreens, but success with that. The thing about Walgreens is if you do find a winning product, they're everywhere, right? Well, at least if you live in like a relatively metropolitan area or whatever.
Yeah, there's
like
tons of them.
you
Every
hit
street
one,
corner in the city, you
yeah.
might.
If you find a winner, now you have 20 stores to hit in an afternoon, and that's pretty valuable too.
Yep. All right, so we've gotten the question a couple times about software. Maybe
Yeah.
we should touch on that for a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think we could probably talk about what softwares are essential back, in the beginning, and then maybe what softwares we weren't using that we started using later on that probably would have helped us.
Yeah.
I guess go at it both ways.
Yeah. So even to this day, I'm pretty lean with it. But if I were talking to a friend, I would say, listen, from day one, knowing what I know now, Keepa, obviously Amazon, you need the app or the account.
Yeah.
Keepa, Inventory Lab, and that's all. That's it. That's all I think you need to start. I really, really do. Very soon after that, and you'll just know a repricer. And outside of that, I've bought a couple things from there, but like truly, you can make it happen with that. And the reason, and even Inventory Lab, it's because creating shipments is such a breeze, but also for accounting, just like for the price of it, it's just such a good value. And it's just like a jack of all trades. I do a tremendous amount of research in there. And if you're going to do retail arbitrage, they give you the scanning app too called Scoutify.
Oh,
and to me, that's like the best scanning app. I still use that to this day. So that's it. That's what I would say. Get from day one. Keepa, non-negotiable. You have to know if you're going to buy a product or not and why. And that's what Keepa is. It's under $20, give or take. Inventory Lab, for a lot of reasons, is like, I think $69.
Yep.
And that's all I would start with.
We'll see. It might go up. 3 Colts just bought it. So not a great sign, because when they bought Tactical Arbitrage, price jacked up, and now they have like a usage-based system. So hopefully they don't do that with Inventory Lab. Like, if you're sending in a certain amount of units, there's going to be tiered pricing. I don't know. I doubt it, but
Yeah. We'll
yeah. So for me, I mostly agree with that. I don't use, I guess when I was doing retail arbitrage, I was not a great retail arbitrager. I had the seller app, right? And I was just scanning, and that doesn't tell you sales rank. It doesn't show you sales history. And then I learned, the Keepa app is not super user friendly, but I was using it sometimes, not all the time. But online arbitrage, yeah, Keepa is essential. I mean, that's the tool you should become the master at as quick as possible in this business. I think, learning the charts, learning sales history, learning offer counts, how it interacts with the sales rank versus how it interacts with the buy box price. so early on, I was just I think for me, Keepa, I didn't even use Keepa the first like 6 months of selling on Amazon. I just literally didn't even know that was a thing. So I was just going off a profit. So you can imagine I made a decent amount of bad buys, not even understanding clothing, right? I was scanning a lot of clothing and I didn't realize that like a red 2XL shirt probably doesn't sell as fast as, the black medium. So that was yeah, Keepa is super important. I did have SellerAmp pretty early on, and that profit calculator, I think for me is just, I think you said Inventory Lab has the Scoutify, and I guess the Seller app, or at least even like the seller.amazon.com, they have a calculator for, you put your ASIN in and your buy costs, and it'll calculate the fees and everything. But I think understanding that is just, it's a good shortcut. I think it'll increase your efficiency. It's not necessary right away, but it's for me, it's more about efficiency there. Yeah, repricer definitely not important in the beginning. I mean, especially when you don't have a ton of products and what repricing entails, and what it's the power of it. If you can reprice yourself like once a day or a couple times a day, or even once every couple days, that's probably good enough until you really start, having a lot of leads and it's taking a ton of time. It's a lot of like opportunity costs. You're always looking at opportunity costs in the business and understanding where can you, have more time for higher value things in the business. But Jorge's versus what you do now, I mean, it hasn't changed a ton. We've just both become experts at the software, right? I think
Hey, sorry to cut you off, but I think that was in regards to his previous question right above that.
Oh,
bookkeeping.
Oh, I just saw the comment come through. And
we should, but honestly, we should talk about what we have now versus that anyway. So why don't we do both?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So Inventory Lab, Keepa. I use Profit Protector Pro as my repricer. I've gone through several of them. I like the price. I like that it's AI and it's very easy to use. I've been very happy with it. I've had a $500 repricer. I've had a $100 repricer. I haven't switched it up in a couple months now, or years now. So I'm using that. I'm trying to think. Like I might not have much more than that. I do have I bought like a one-time thing, OA Buddy, which helps you kind of know which sites, what their limits are when they'll cancel your orders. It's a little extension at the top of my browser, one-time fee. IP Alert, I highly vouch for that, especially as a beginner. It's a one-time fee as well. And that'll kind of let you know which brands are flagged and are known to file IP complaints. But gosh, I hope I'm not forgetting anything, but that's it. That's really it.
Yeah, you can keep it simple. I mean, really, if you understand the basics, I think like I mentioned, we are just experts at every aspect of Keepa. We really understand Inventory Lab, and my prep center uses Inventory Lab. I would assume yours does too.
Yeah.
And it's the interface and understanding like the numbers and how to use it is just important. So why switch something why switch off of Inventory Lab or Keepa if it becomes another tool? If we are experts at this tool and we know exactly what information we need to find or determine if the lead's profitable, or determine if we need to reprice or this or that. So
yeah,
I right now it's Keepa, SellerAmp, which I use for my lead tracking. I think that's how it's easy just to transfer leads to spreadsheets. I have BeCool as my repricer. I have the AI version, which is nice. And again, I've heard a million different opinions on different repricers, but for me, it's just ease of use. I've used BeCool for so long. I just don't feel like learning a new software. And maybe one or the other has a better AI and it can make me more money in the long run. But for me, it's just, I know exactly how to reprice. When I do reprice twice a week, it's boom. I can go quick down the line. I know exactly what buttons to click, what things to look for. And it's as efficient as I can be, because really repricing for me is not once you understand like what the philosophy, your philosophy is of repricing, right? Some people might have a huge min max. Some people might keep it tight and change it often. But whatever it is, once you know that, it's not really a super high value task to be changing numbers, right? If you're sitting at the minimum and you drop your minimum $1, like that doesn't take a lot of brain power. So as quickly as I can do that. Other than that, yeah, I mean, Inventory Lab, I think we covered it. I mean, like I said, it doesn't need to be super complicated. You don't need 30 different softwares. I have Sellerboard, but I talked about that earlier and why I like it. Other than that, yeah, the more data you have, sometimes it can be detrimental to your efficiency. It might help you with numbers and different things, but just make sure you aren't getting bogged down by too many things, because it's just going to confuse you more and make it harder on you. And maybe you'll learn everything eventually and you become quick at it, but it's not required to be fully successful at the business.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not even trying to do this shamelessly, but if anyone is interested in IP Alert or OA Buddy, I have discount codes in all my YouTube videos. Also, I should mention, I don't know if I'd call them software. They're all free, but use every cashback extension in the game. I'm looking at mine. Rakuten,
Honey, Top Cashback.
Yeah, right. The coupon stuff and the cashback stuff. That stuff's no brainer. Good, easy money. But yeah, so moral of the story, don't overcomplicate things. And at the beginning, I remember even being like certain softwares I would hear, not realizing they were for like private label, tactical arbitrage, like get good at the basics and then dabble, right? But like, just know people even at our level, like that's all we're using, none of that's going to make up when you're a beginner, especially that stuff's not going to make up for just like action, so.
Exactly. Let's see here. Yeah.
Go up a little.
We'll go up a little bit. We got a couple above this. How long from your first shipment should you have a repricer? It's kind of there's a couple different answers I guess you could go with. There's the answer of when you feel like you're spending too much time manually repricing, and you should be manually repricing at least a little bit, right? Especially if you're finding an item that you think should be selling quickly and you're not getting a ton of sales, just check the price on it, right? You can go right in your inventory on the web, seller.amazon.com, and you can check, are you matched with the current buy box? And if you're not, manually change it. Maybe once a day, check it when you wake up, go through your 10 products that are in inventory, or 15, whatever it is, change it manually. If you're spending too much time doing that and you feel like you could be doing other things, then you could get a repricer. Otherwise, some people will offer like a certain like revenue threshold where they think it's now more important to do that. I don't know if you have a certain opinion on it. I just think if you're spending too much time repricing and you feel like you could be doing better things with your time, then maybe get repricer. But yeah, I don't know. It's not a super like hard cut line of when you should be getting it.
Yeah, I mean, first off, something to really understand, just to be crystal clear on, is like, this is not eBay in that it's a set it and forget it price. The buy box is constantly fluctuating, right? So if you're not manually repricing and willing to do that, then you need to have a repricer. Whatever, whether it's manual or a software, you need to be repricing often. And that's why for me, it's a pretty early on process. I don't remember when I did it, but I'm just going to put a loose number. If you have 50 products or 100 products consistently in stock, different ASINs, I think that's probably a number where it's going to justify it. And like, to give you context, I think I pay $65 a month, right? And that should pay for itself multiple times over, because you're going to get more sales when you're priced appropriately. Okay. And in theory, you should be able to, it's when you're doing it manually, you're probably just going to keep matching the buy box, but sometimes you should be above the buy box and stuff like that. Right. And so like the repricer will help you with that as well.
Exactly. Does Inventory Lab do what SellerAmp does? I'm a beginner. It does a lot more than SellerAmp, but the SellerAmp extension on your Amazon page is definitely going to be inefficient. It's going to help with efficiency, but Inventory Lab has the Scoutify, right? It basically matches what the SellerAmp app does.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? I mean, Inventory Lab is a big tool, and that's why it's $70 a month, and SellerAmp is $25. But
first things first, it's apples to oranges. Like just because
Yeah.
Inventory Lab, it's really known for creating shipments. So that's something that like is in a league of its own. Then they just stack on top of it. It comes with a great scanning app for retail arbitrage if you do that. But as far as like my
Mhm.
sourcing or like product research, um, I connect Keepa to Inventory Lab. So like, you know, I don't know that it's so like SellerAmp. I think you can save Google Sheets. You can look at Keepa right in this. Essentially, you could achieve the same things for the most part, right? Um, but you're going to have it in different views and preferences and little things here and there.
Yeah.
Like Inventory Lab, I wouldn't say is predominantly made to help you with sourcing product research, but it's a part of it. Whereas in SellerAmp, I feel like is like that's the bread and butter, unless I'm mistaken, right?
Yep. Yep.
So apples to oranges, both
Definitely.
can work.
How did you guys start out with bookkeeping? What were you using versus what you do now?
Yeah. So I think this is something that gets, as I saw this, I was just thinking of a couple of things. I don't overcomplicate it. I would strongly encourage a business credit card and making all of your transactions on that. Obviously, don't overextend yourself. Get a good credit card. We've talked about that. But like just from a cleanliness standpoint, it's very easy. If you use Inventory Lab to do all of your shipments, it's great for accounting, like really, really good for accounting.
Yeah.
And frankly, I still will just because I use straight business credit cards, end of the year come tax time, like I can just print out every month's and like everything's basically inventory, but then I can highlight, okay, this is software, right? Or if I'm really on top of it in Inventory Lab, I can add my monthly expenses, and then it's really a one-stop shop. So, can a professional help you? Are there softwares? I'm sure, but like even to this day, I just I haven't overcomplicated it, and my CPA like they tell me what they need, but I get it to them.
Yeah, I have. It's not that I have complicated it, but I have outsourced this one quite a bit. I did have a spreadsheet, like I just created an Excel sheet where I had right every item that I purchased, the date, what it sold for, the fees involved, and then my overall payout or profit. So I used that to track when I was only doing a couple thousand a year that first year, and then I actually I mean you can go with like a um, what's the company? It's like it's a self-service bookkeeper that's like $25 a month.
Um,
Um,
if I heard it, I would know what it is.
yeah. Anyway, it's you still have to do everything yourself, but you can reconcile and it makes it easy to like categorize purchases and stuff. Again, Inventory Lab, I've never used it as the bookkeeping side. I wish I would have started with that because I think it would have been once you get the hang of like adding your shipping, right? If you went to the store and bought shipping supplies, like
Right.
add it in, scan, take a picture of your receipt, scan, upload that in. Like it's really easy to do and track if you're on top of it. I actually have a third-party software called Bench that does my bookkeeping for me, and it's yeah, all they have access to linked to all my cards and all my spending, and they have it all categorized very nicely. A little pricey, but it's for me, it helps me stay hands off, and it's they have a nice printout at the end of the year with the end of the year numbers and everything, so makes it easy, but it's definitely not necessary.
If and also like if you again business bank account, business credit
Yeah,
card, and
definitely
that's
that.
all you use. I Even if you do nothing throughout the year, you can knock it out. You can reconcile in a weekend by yourself by just printing these out and
Yep.
like color coding, highlighting, for instance. So like, I guess what I'm getting at is like, don't worry about. I mean, do it right. But if you have a bank account and a credit card will really help you keep you separate, and then you can figure it out.
Yep. Even if you're like, okay, I'm getting a paycheck from my 9 to 5, I'm going to put $1,000 into my business every month. Don't spend inventory with your personal account with that thousand. Transfer the thousand to your business checking, then spend the inventory with the business checking
Right.
card. It's just going to make things so much easier to track, and
Yeah.
your accountant's going to be a lot happier too. So just
Totally.
a simple tip there. But
Yep.
Shane asks, "Hey guys, what are your thoughts on mentors and coaching?" We can both speak on this.
Sure.
Coaching, I think, is helpful depending where you're at in the business. I think if you're a complete beginner, I don't think coaching is going to benefit you as much, only because there's so much free resource to get you to a point where where you potentially want to be, right? If you're starting, you're only bought in a few products, you can watch hundreds of hours of videos on Keepa charts and how to buy your first product and how to send in shipments. And you don't need a mentor to tell you how to create an inventory lab shipment. Like that is, I feel like, a waste of resource for you, especially if you don't have a ton of capital. But if you're doing consistent 10K months, 20K months, and you're just stuck and you don't really know how to scale any higher, or find more inventory, right? Or maybe you're just kind of, you've never really got the grasp of sourcing, then maybe a coach or a mentor might be able to get you over the hump because, they've went through those same struggles, and they've probably found out how to get over them. So I don't know, definitely not a necessity. And there's a ton of free resource out there. I mean, both our YouTube channels, we go over a ton of, the beginner stuff, but also even intermediate stuff, right? We're breaking down Keepa charts. We're talking about, some of the more advanced tactics that a beginner might understand. So you can find a lot of that stuff out there. Or you can, coaching will definitely accelerate certain things and it might help you with very specific questions. That's the thing. If you have a ton of niche questions that you're not going to just find in a video, a coach can definitely sit down with you and answer a ton of questions that you might have, or answer these little things. Not to plug anything, I don't do coaching normally unless people, reach out for it. So, that's kind of my take there. I'm willing to coach, but it's not something that I promote because just not at that place. But what are your thoughts on mentors and coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think first thing that comes to mind is like nothing is good or all bad, right? There's good and bad mentors, there's good and bad coaches, right? I would agree though, something that you mentioned, like before you get to any of that, and like just get out there and put in the reps for at least a couple months so that you at least can create real world questions, not theoretical ones. Nothing is going to replace your action and your real life experience and buying products, getting feedback on the products, learning from that, and continuing to do that, right? If you don't know how to create a shipment and you don't know how to read, like a coach can't propel you from knowing nothing to being really good, right? You need to have to understand. And like when I think about it, because I haven't done anything, but I have been thinking about like what makes it worth my while and what I want to do. And like putting in these years of content and now 4 years of Amazon, like I kind of have this idea of having like an 8-person group where we can like really get into some stuff to grow for everyone. But like they would have to be at a point that they are so beyond just the early beginner stage, right? And I say that to say like you just kind of got to figure some stuff out on your own. You really do. You have to take some action. And there's so much free resource out there for YouTube, right? Any question you encounter, it's out there. I understand wanting to jump the line. Sometimes it could be worth it, right? Totally get that concept. But like, I think it's so much more valuable to put that money and time into just put in the reps. I mean, you should be able to get to retail arbitrage just from, if you put in, I'm going to just throw out a random number. If you put in 20 hours a week of retail arbitrage, you could probably get to $20,000 in sales, spending 8, 9, 10 grand max, right? With really good return on that money. And like prove to yourself you're willing to do that and then say, okay, now I'll invest in Jumpstart type of thing. But so yeah, I mean, I guess long-winded answer to say, I think there's a time and place for it. There's a person to fit what you need and where you're at. I would also strongly encourage you to maybe link up with other people at your level. Sharing leads and asking questions and leaning on people is a free way to be very valuable as well.
Yep. All right. So we've gone pretty long here. So we're going to do rapid fire on the rest of the questions. And then we're going to each mention maybe one more thing that we wish we knew as a beginner and then wrap it up here. So
cool.
Waldo, what is better, buy box statistics from Keepa or buy box analysis from SellerAmp? I think the Keepa. I'm not sure where SellerAmp pulls their statistics from, so I can't quite answer that. But Keepa buy box statistics has been a staple of information that I've used a ton in the past. I'm sure Jonathan can talk about buy box statistics well from Keepa. Keepa is just a tool that I trust because I've used it so many times. I understand the data. So,
Yeah,
do you use tactical arbitrage?
I dabbled with it early on, like right when I started. Talk
Yep.
about learn from bad experience. If you don't know the basics, like it's not gonna solve anything. I don't use it.
Yep.
But real quick, I'm sure some people that know how to use it, any tool that you really know how to use is gonna at least pay for itself.
Yep. Exactly. And QuickBooks was the name of the software.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray. And thanks for joining us. He said he's got to go get some groceries from Walmart, but thanks for helping out with us for so long. What should be the point of the term of revenue when you should switch to an LLC?
Okay, we should mention not legal advice, right?
Yeah, we're not legal professionals.
No, I don't.
Advice, no.
That's a case by case thing. My thought process is, if an LLC is holding you back from starting, just start as a sole proprietorship, basically under your name, right? But I would say this: if you're serious about it or know you're going to be doing it, why not create that blanket of protection and make your business life easier and taxes easier? Like, I don't need John Smith suing me, the individual. They can sue my company if they want to, right? So I don't think it's a revenue thing. I think it's just a level of comfort. And like an LLC and starting it, although it could be daunting, $100,
Yeah, it's not super expensive. That's what I was going to mention. Not super expensive, but yeah, up to you. And again, look at some YouTube videos or looking on Reddit or some sites to find out, easiest way in your state to get an LLC started or whatever it is. You can find those resources pretty easily. Thoughts on tactical arbitrage? We just kind of mentioned it. We don't really use it. You can use it if you want. It's definitely a great tool if you don't have a ton of time to source, but you understand like the sales, sites that are running sales, right? You can basically what you can do with tactical arbitrage, you can, let's say Walgreens is running that buy one, get one 50% off, and then 20% off on beauty, or let's just say beauty, right? They have a specific beauty product, site-wide 20% off, but then they have a buy one, get one 50% off on a specific beauty category or even a brand. You can highlight that brand, run the 20% off and a buy one, get one 50% off. So it calculates that with each product it's searching. And then it'll find all the matches that are profitable under your criteria for that product on Walgreens versus Amazon. So if you don't have time to do that kind of sourcing, it might be worth it. It's just an expensive tool and it's not an easy one to learn either. So just understand that.
Yeah. Right. I don't have a lot to add to that. I don't use it, but like he was just saying though, if you know what you're doing, I'm sure it can be a very powerful tool. But first, again, you need to understand to get to that brand that you just used as an example. And by that, you have to, just like get in the trenches a little.
And just one last thing on that, you can also use it as like you could use a leads list, right? Yeah. Understand the brands that are on Amazon, because maybe you just have no clue, right? And you use tactical arbitrage to see, oh, these 3 brands, even though they're not quite profitable based on the software, the tool didn't work as well as I thought it would. I know these 3 brands have a direct match on Amazon, and maybe you keep track of those, like we said on spreadsheets, right? Keep track of those, and maybe when Walgreens runs a 25% off site-wide plus the buy one, get one, then you now are profitable compared to like a 15% off plus buy one, get one. So, just those types of things, just pick up on and try to get as much information out of and as much value out of every tool that you use. So, All right. Maybe one more topic of things we wish we had, and we'll make it semi-quick because we've been on for over an hour now, but and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, so mine is going to be on a more of a topic conversation. It's going to be about ungating versus gating. Just give you my thought. I think for beginners, a lot of times you hear, oh, it's so easy to ungate. This is how you get ungated. You're scanning, you're not, finding anything. And then you do find something and you're gated in it. And you're just like, oh, whatever. Like, I am such an advocate for focus on selling the things that you're allowed to sell without being ungated. And then, because if you don't know how to find that stuff, you're not going to all of a sudden be able to find winning stuff because you're ungated in something. There's plenty out there that's available to you from day one. I'm not saying it's as advantageous, but like my point is, it is by no means necessary to ungate to be successful with this. I didn't, except for grocery, and I think that's smart if you do retail arbitrage. A lot of things came to me organically, ungated, and naturally over the next 6 months, and with time, pretty much anything else. And anything, if I really wanted it, I could. I've probably done it only 5 or 10 times in 4 years, and I don't think has affected my business whatsoever. So, that's just my take. Don't get caught up in ungating is what I would get at. Just focus on what you can sell.
Yep. That's pretty important, especially beginners. It's more of a mindset thing on the ungating. A lot of people will use that as a barrier, and then they will, create this like, oh, well, I have an excuse to not get started, or I have an excuse to not, be successful in it. And it's just, don't let that hold you back, basically. One last thing I wanted to mention was know when to outsource. And I don't want to advocate for outsourcing everything, but for me, and this is just my specific anecdote here, is I got a prep center probably 6 months later than I should have. And it's only because I was evaluating my time, how much I was spending on certain things, right? It's evaluating your time. It actually can help you in a lot of different ways. But what I suggest everyone do tomorrow, or even sometime, over the next week, when you are able to work on your business, spell out, right? Track how you're spending your time when you are working on the business, right? Maybe you're working your job and then you get home at 4 p.m. and from 4 to 6 before dinner, you can work on the business. What are you doing during those 2 hours? Write down exactly what you did, right? Like from 4 to 4:30, I was manual sourcing. From 4:30 to 6, I did reverse sourcing, whatever. And I found this many leads. And then after dinner, you did whatever. So track your day, right? And understand where you're spending your time and how efficient you are with that time. For me, I was doing that, I did that for like a week straight and understood that I was spending 10 to maybe even up to like 16 hours a week prepping products. And for me, it was like, if I could spend an extra, I'm working on this full time. If I could spend an extra 16 hours sourcing instead of prepping, how much more could I scale this business? Like that is a lot of time spent on just putting a sticker on over a barcode and throwing a poly bag on a piece of clothing. Like that is not super challenging stuff that I know I could hire somebody to do. So for me is just, if you understand how much time you're spending on certain tasks and the high value tasks aren't getting as much time as you want, maybe consider like what can you outsource that will add more time to your day where you can spend it growing the business faster, because that's going to be helpful. I'm not saying go and outsource everything, get a prep center when you're only making, $5K a month, but just understand, like, if you are finding bottlenecks in the business, maybe outsourcing certain things can remove those bottlenecks.
Yeah. Agreed. I agree. I think, I think a lot of these, you kind of just get a feel for when it's time, it's like, oh, wow, I've proven to myself, I'm doing this for a while. I'm having success finding things, but I can't source today because I have to pack.
Yep.
That's unfortunate, it just comes though. It's not just like, I think for me, at least, it's all come kind of like very organically, like, yep, it's time to do this, or it's time to do that,
Yep, exactly. So yeah, like I said, just evaluate what you're spending your time on. And if you realize like, oh man, I'm spending too much time manually repricing my products, or I'm spending too much time prepping and I'm only getting, 3 hours, 10 hours a week sourcing, when I could be getting 12 to 15 hours if I eliminated certain things that aren't making me money, right? You just evaluate what you're doing, and maybe you can make some changes, little tweaks here and there that'll improve the efficiency and maybe allow you to spend more money on inventory and scale the business a little bit quicker. So, all right. Well, that was a long conversation, but a ton of value given out. I mean, we had a ton of great questions as well. So we appreciate everybody in the comments leaving good questions. We're always happy to answer those. And again, you can follow us on social media. Jonathan has a great YouTube channel. I have one as well that we give out a lot of the same information, just talking about how we scaled our Amazon businesses and the ins and outs of that. So if you have other questions for us or topics that you want to see us talk about on this weekly call, you can let us know in the comments of this video. You can DM us on Instagram, whatever you need to do to contact us, but we're happy to look for topics to talk about, of things you guys want to talk about. So we appreciate everybody that joined us on the call tonight, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. See you guys.